Well, hi, David.
Phil, this is exciting.
It's a big day for us.
Yes, I don't think we have had any elected. We've had rock stars. We've had superstar actors.
Yeah.
We've had members of the Rosenthal family. We've had our wives. But we have never had, I don't think, an elected official.
Certainly not a mayor.
And certainly not our mayor.
Our mayor here in Los Angeles, the Honorable Karen Bass, is with us today. How about that? That's a booking coup, I think.
Coup. Don't use coup with an elected official. It's not a good word.
Well,
and we have some exciting food because
Yes.
she has chosen something that is very exciting and not the usual sandwich you
She
try to
might
get
be
me.
a foodie.
Yes, we're going to find that out.
Yeah, okay. How long have you lived in LA?
I moved here in 1991.
Right.
I have voted every time.
Me too. Yeah.
I
I got here in 89.
89. Oh,
Yes.
You got
Yes.
me beat.
But we were both East Coasters.
yes.
We were both from the New York, New Jersey area,
Yep.
the New York metropolitan area. Did you ever live in New York City?
Oh, yeah, for many years for Rolling Stone. That was,
Oh, yeah.
I was in the city for most of it. And I'll tell you, it's interesting. I might mention this to the mayor, but I realized, both of us in different ways get to meet a lot of people, but
Right.
I haven't met a lot of mayors.
Right.
The one mayor I think I've ever met was Mayor Ed Koch, because if you lived in New York, you could not avoid meeting Mayor Koch, because if something happened, he was there. And I remember one time I lived on 34th Street, and
Yeah.
there was a movie theater, and it caught fire, and he was there so quickly. I had some questions whether he had lit the fire so that he could help put out the fire.
That's hilarious.
And I did get to meet Ed Koch. That was quite a mayor.
Mayor by Munchausen.
Yes.
Proxy. Yeah.
But I'm sorry, you were talking about, which I think, we've both been in LA a long time.
Yes.
It is now our home.
Right.
And it is a home that we have seen go through so much. Like,
Yep.
I know if I got here, you were here before me. We
Yeah.
were here for the riots. We were
Yeah.
here for,
Earthquakes.
Earthquakes.
Yes.
We've been here, obviously, through, a big fire. And it's amazing.
But I love it.
We love our
Yes.
town. And
Yes.
and when I first moved here, I remember a million people told me, "You're a New Yorker. You're going to hate LA."
It did take me a good year and a half. Did you assimilate right away?
I assimilated right away.
Really?
I had never driven.
You'd
a
never
car.
seen the sun.
Yes, exactly. I do. I love LA, and
Yeah.
I'm a Dodger fan, and when
I
I
see
hear
it.
Randy Newman, that
Yes.
song, I think he meant it a little ironically at the time. I mean it pretty sincerely.
Oh yeah, and it's taken totally sincerely. It's not as big a mischaracterization as Born in the USA is.
Yes.
But yes, there is always a touch of sarcasm in Randy Newman's work, but it has become the official anthem.
Absolutely. I have a question for you because you are so popular at this moment. I know I'm popular because people are trying to get to me to get into your restaurant, Max and Helen's. So you are kind of right now the mayor of Los Angeles.
No, maybe Larchmont.
Do you have any intention of seeking public office? At
No,
any point?
I'm one of the few people who think you should be really, really smart to hold public office.
Exactly. So no for you then.
No, thank you. I let the experts do what they do. Just like I don't cook, right? So I let the great chefs cook. And
Yeah.
I'm a fan. I'm happy to be a fan.
But we have both written for politicians,
True.
presidents indeed.
Yes.
So maybe, if we're lucky, we'll get to get some advice. We can throw in a few words for the mayor.
Well, let's welcome Mayor Karen Bass.
Let's spill the beans, chew the fat, food for thought, and jokes on tap. Talking with our mouths full, having fun. A piece of cake and humble pie, serving up a slice of life. Leave the dressing on the side, it's naked lunch. Clothing optional.
You just came. I want to jump right in because
Sure, go
we
right
have
ahead.
breaking news that you just came from the first hearing
Yes,
about
congressional
ICE.
hearing. That's right.
Okay, so you have a smile on your face, so I'm thinking it went well.
It did.
Tell
it
us,
did
tell
go
us.
well.
Yeah.
You know, the whole point, we ask for a congressional investigation because what we're trying to do is establish a record for the future. Usually what happens is in these moments in history, years go by and people look back. If you
Yes.
think about Watergate, if you think about Iran-Contra-Gate,
Yeah.
it's kind of in
We
that
think about
same
those things all the
spirit.
time now.
Yes, right, exactly. Watergate looks like a kid's basketball game
Yeah.
compared to what we're facing now.
Right.
But wanting to have that testimony and documentation right now. So I asked, since we have Robert Garcia in our area, you know, he's now the lead Democrat on the Government Investigation Committee. So asking him to do that. And, you know, it was a tough hearing, you know, because people who gave testimony are still very traumatized, you know, had a hard time kind of getting through the testimony and all.
So you're talking to witnesses.
Oh yeah, these
You're
were
talking to
people who
people-
were detained. You know, there was at the end there was a gentleman who had been detained, you know, and he was raped in the detention
Oh,
center.
God.
Talking about the conditions that were in, you know, in the detention center. One young woman, very young woman, is a U.S. citizen, and she was detained and she was missing for several days before her family found her and realized that, you know, she had been detained. And for me, I think about it as we roll into the holidays, all the family members that will be missing.
It's so unfathomable to me that this can happen in our country.
I know.
My parents are Holocaust survivors.
Mm.
We know Japanese people who were interred, where their families were interred. It's so horrible. I mean, I know you're taking testimony for the future, but what can we do right now? How do we
Exactly.
fight back?
Exactly. Well, you know, and I think what we have done here,
Yeah,
you know, they started with us. I describe us as the Petri dish, you know,
yeah.
and then they went and they took the show on the road. But I just think it's
The worst
really
tour ever.
the
Yeah.
worst tour ever. And it seemed like it got worse and worse every city they went to. You know, they were more and more brutal every place they went. I do think that the protests are really super important. Could you imagine if there were no protest at all? But how we protest is what is critical. And what I hope is that people, especially younger people, learn from generations in the past when we had these big moral issues and the importance of non-violent, peaceful protests.
Which is
Right.
exactly where you
Because-
came into the political world. Am I right? That was sort of your...
Yeah, as a child.
Yes,
Yes.
literally as a child.
As a child, I grew up watching, you know, the civil rights movement on TV. And my father was from the South, and he would explain to me what I was watching. But this administration wants to provoke people. They would love that because then they could say that's why we need the military. Remember, they said we needed the military, and I'll never forget Trump claiming victory on the Saturday where there was that big protest, and it did become, you know, there was vandalism, there was a element of violence that was there at the end, and then he called for the National Guard. Now, the National Guard didn't come until the next day,
Yeah.
but he proclaimed the reason why he personally brought peace to the streets in LA because of the National Guard. But they didn't even arrive until the next day. The point being, we had the capacity to manage it here. Not just LAPD, but the sheriffs and the
Sure.
local law enforcement that was here. There was never a need for the military. So that's why it's so important that the protests stay on assuming and going after the moral high ground, raising this as a moral issue and staying peaceful so you don't give them an excuse for, you know, to militarize our streets.
And what's your theory for why he's doing this around the country?
Well, you know, if you think about the stuff that not just he, but the people around him said, they wanted to flood the zone. And
to
flooding,
distract us from...
well, flooding the zone has been a strategy
Yeah.
that I think just constantly traumatizes us. It's like just when you think you've seen it all,
Yeah.
come out with something new.
Today's
So-
scandal is replaced by tomorrow's.
Exactly.
And
But
you
it
can't keep up.
also it kind of gets you to the point, as opposed to saying for the first time in 249 years, we have a president who's turned the military on the citizens.
Yes.
And I think that it is a way of getting people prepared. So I call it dosing.
Prepared for what?
Prepared for authoritarianism. prepared for a president that has no holes barred, but because
And
of
to
my
keep us from going to the voting booth.
well, exactly right. I mean, they said,
Yeah.
and they did. You remember they did raids on election day.
Yep.
They did. What I think they keep forgetting is that we don't need to go to the voting booth. But he wants us to end that. Remember,
Yeah.
he wants California to end mail-in voting.
Yep.
He wants us to have voter ID. And my concern, of course, is that they might begin to condition some federal funding on us making some changes like that, which none of us are going to do. But back to your question, though, about what do we do?
Yes.
I do think it's important that we assist the families. What I've learned in my life, when you're undergoing trauma, whether it's the trauma of his first election or the trauma of his second election, people need something concrete to do.
Yeah.
And usually something physical. So when he was elected the first time, I was in Congress, and my constituents were just furious, and they wanted something to do. They weren't mad at me because obviously I wasn't a Trump supporter. So what I did was I said, I got to capture that energy and channel it someplace constructive. So what we did was we got everybody together every Saturday, and we went out door knocking for Democrats. And so we focused on the two Katies, Katie Porter and Katie Hill.
Yep.
And we won those seats. I mean, obviously a lot of people were involved, but people felt like they had something to do. They were in community with others who felt the same way.
That's the proactive choice.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's healing, and
Right.
it's kind of the same thing that that I see here, is that really wanting to channel people. Protest is important. It is important to speak out against this, but I think what is critical is how you do it, and the way they characterized LA, like LA was on fire. I don't know. Were you guys here in '92?
Yes.
Yes.
That was
That
a
was on
riot.
fire. Yes.
That was civil unrest. If you remember, the airport was shut down for a while
Absolutely.
because of the fires,
Yes.
and they lost visibility. What we had here, I call a Laker championship plus. I mean,
Yes. Yes.
you have after
Not even a
Laker-
Dodgers World Series win.
Right.
Plus.
I mean, you have the reveille. Everybody's all excited, but there's always knuckleheads that hang around at the end and set something on fire,
Right.
vandalize a MTA bus, always. But that doesn't.
But it's not a large scale riot.
No.
Well, can I ask you, when you mentioned flooding the zone, usually the zone is being flooded with terrible things and bad behavior that just I worry about the impact on our kids. Just
Right.
when bullying is sort of, allowed or, making an example for kids. Recently, as a mayor, I wondered what you thought of the rather surreal meeting with the mayor-elect of New York in the Oval Office, where it's like usually we're surprised by how rude the conversation is.
Yeah.
This was the opposite. I wondered what you made of that.
Well, it reminded me of when I had to go do a meeting like that with 600 other members of the Congressional Black Caucus, and we kept it very friendly. I mean, I think one characteristic of the president is he can do that, and then 2 days later, he'll cut your throat. So, I mean, I thought it was good that Mamdani was able to have a cordial meeting with him, but I'm sure he knows that we'll see how long that lasts.
Somebody said that his friendliness to Mamdani was more of a sign of his cognitive decline than when he's normally nasty.
Yeah.
That this was so out of character that
Yeah.
even the Republicans were like, whoa, something's wrong.
Yeah.
My favorite moment was just the fact that I've never heard in conversation someone say, "No, go ahead, say I'm a fascist."
Call me a fascist.
Which is
I've never seen that.
Yes, that's never. I don't think that's happened in a. There's no Samuel Beckett play
No,
that would
only
happen.
in a Mel Brooks movie
Yes.
where Hitler may say, yeah, it's all right. I'm proud of it. Yeah. It's a little crazy. We're in a crazy time.
We are really in a crazy time. But you know what? That's part of flooding the zone too, is that we feel like we're unsettled. It's uncertain, and we're not stable right now. You remember in his last term, we'd wake up, well, I don't know if you're obsessed like I am, wake up in the morning going, what did he tweet last night? Because
right.
that was going to characterize my whole day when I was in Congress, depending on what he did.
Right.
Now I think we're so numb to it
Yeah.
that we don't react in the same kind of way. I mean, he's bombing people all over the place and saying they're, drug trafficking. I don't know how you can tell. that they're drug trafficking. But if you look at the international and the national, and then what we could be subject to on the local, is tough.
Well, I always wondered, you've been in Congress and you've been a mayor. And I wonder, from afar, my presumption is always that mayors have real jobs. Governors have real jobs. Congress, it doesn't always feel like that. And at this moment in history, it feels less like people are getting much done there.
Well, it's funny you say that. I was talking to one of the new Congress members today, and I was exchanging what happened with me. When I went into Congress, Democrats lost 65 seats, and there were only 9 members of my class. We called ourselves the Noble Nine.
Yes.
And so 65 new Republicans. I came in with the Tea Party, that class.
Wow.
And
You were not particularly welcomed at the Tea Party.
No, I was not welcomed at the Tea Party. But you know what? The thing about Congress, and I was sharing with her, is that it does change. The houses change. And so when you're in the minority, it's an opportunity to dig your heels in, learn the job, find out what you want to focus on, and get things done. When we were in the minority, I started a bipartisan caucus on foster care. I didn't have any Republicans that wanted to come. So I talked to Kevin McCarthy. He was a friend. He still is a friend. And I said, Kevin, I need you to recruit some Republicans for me so I can have this bipartisan caucus. And he did, although the condition was that I had to go with him to Europe because he needed a Democrat on the trip. So I said, okay, I'll go on the trip. We were celebrating the 100th anniversary of Ronald Reagan, and we were going throughout Eastern Europe, and I was not a Reagan fan. But the point is that you can get things done when you're in when you're in the minority. But a lot of what Congress does on a day-to-day basis never hits the news, especially if it's bipartisan, because the news really only wants to cover the fights. So I worked with a lot of very, very, very extremely conservative Republicans because I found the issues that we could work together on. And it pays off now because some of the people he appointed are people that I worked with before. And so that's helpful. And even though there's the war going on with the administration, there are members of the administration that I still reach out and talk to.
Well, that's great because when you mentioned Ronald Reagan, like one of the things that hurts me about this moment is my kids are now out of college, but when I raised them, I took them to every presidential library. I love presidential libraries, and we went to Reagan, we went to Nixon, because all of it is American history.
Exactly.
And I think there was something.
Go to the Trump.
I don't have my bookings in yet. I think I'm gonna go to Max and Helen's a lot more before I go to that library.
I can't wait to go to Max and Helen's.
Come on.
I haven't been there, but I want to go.
Be my guest. I'll be happy to take you.
Yeah, good. Okay, I'm going to hold you to that.
Okay.
If you want any recommendations, I can tell you it's something.
Well, I hear that it's like a 2 or 3 hour wait or something.
If you're lucky.
This weekend, which was our first weekend open, it was 8 hours.
Really?
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
it's a little crazy.
So then I'll definitely wait to go with you.
Yes, you come with me though. I know a guy.
Good.
I want to go back to ICE for a second. Is it better now? Or am I just not, is the news not covering what they're doing as much?
The news isn't covering it.
Oh, man. So it's still awful.
Yes, they're still doing
They're
daily.
rating, they're just, the news is covering the new cities that they're in. As opposed to, so they've never left.
Exactly. No, they never left.
Has it gotten worse?
No, it hasn't gotten worse. I would describe it this way: the volume is not as high, meaning that instead of 10 raids, 10 different places in a day, they might do 3. The other thing that seems to have subsided somewhat is the street kidnappings, where they would just run up on somebody, jump out of the car.
Yes.
It seems like they're not doing that as often.
I read that. Tell me the statistic because I don't want to get it wrong. What percentage of people are completely legal and they're doing it anyway to them?
I don't have a percentage.
Yeah.
I can tell you that in this hearing, they documented over 100 people who were full-blown citizens who were detained.
So it's just racism.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, yes, it is.
That's
just
all
no
it is.
way. There's no way to describe it. They're not looking for Canadians. And
Right.
I mean, and Canadians overstay visas. Europeans overstay visas. You know what I mean?
And these
This
are
is
people
very
who
targeted.
are following the rules of their green card to get a green card, right? They're following all the correct things you're supposed to do. They're here
Yes.
legally.
Well,
And they're-
actually, I was making a distinction because those 137
Uh-huh.
are full-blown U.S. citizens. I don't know
They're
how
not
many.
even applying for citizenship.
No.
They are
no.
citizens.
They're like
Yeah.
you and me.
Yes.
But there is a whole nother category of people who are here in the country legally who are being detained. And can you imagine this? We require you to report in to immigration once a year. You have an appointment
Yes.
down at the federal building,
Yes.
and you show up for your appointment and you get detained. You're doing exactly what you were told to do. So you know what that's going to mean. Other people then will be fearful of meeting their requirement and say, well, if I go in, I might be detained. But if I don't go in, then I've fallen out of status.
Oh, God.
It's but again, the blanket of fear that
Yeah.
is still over these communities still
Yeah.
exists.
Do you have advice for people in these situations, or how to prevent these situations from happening, or what
Well-
to do when ICE comes up to you?
So we are very lucky here to have such a well-established infrastructure of immigrant rights organizations
Yes.
that have been doing this for years. And so we basically refer them to them, and they have very specific steps that they want people to do. But the problem with this administration is they don't follow the rules or the law. These immigrant rights organizations have been dealing with immigration enforcement actions for a long time, but they don't follow the rules for immigration enforcement action. So now you have people who are U.S. citizens or here who feel like Latinos, who now
Yeah.
feel like they have to carry their passport. It's kind of like, because your driver's license isn't enough. So you have, or your birth certificate.
So if
You
someone
have to
carried their
prove-
passport, that would get them out of trouble?
Yeah, technically, they still might detain you for a couple of days, but technically, yeah. But it reminds me of the Jim Crow South, where people had to carry a pass, or South Africa, where Black Africans couldn't be out. They had to carry passes. And that's a shame that people feel like they have to carry their birth certificate or
We would
passport.
advise them to do so
I would,
to avoid
absolutely.
trouble
Absolutely.
for right now.
Right.
And these hearings,
Right.
if I'm hearing you correctly, they're to hold people accountable later.
Yes, they
so
are.
this doesn't
but-
happen again.
Yeah, but the other reason is to educate the public now. Like, for example, I think most people think this happened in June and July and it's gone.
Because of the news.
Right. Right.
So we want to let people know this is still happening. They still have to be vigilant.
Right.
Can citizens help? I've seen certain videos where citizens kind of got in the way
Yes.
and scared some of them off.
Yes.
Is that advisable or is that dangerous?
No, I think it is extremely dangerous. I think what is advisable and is important, document,
Get your phone out.
film,
Yeah.
but stay away.
'Cause they could hurt you.
Well, they could shoot you. I mean, there was the case of the woman that they showed. I think they showed her, maybe it was 60 Minutes last night, where they showed her where they said that she drove her car into them, but now they have video of it that shows
course.
it's not the case. But they shot her 5 or 6 times, and she
are
was
these
showing
guys?
her bullet wounds.
Who are these guys?
That is a big question. Who are they?
Do you
Who are
think
these
they're the
masked men?
January 6ers?
I do. I mean, I put it this way.
Yeah.
It would not surprise me because he did,
released a lot of
them.
people.
And a lot of those guys, and they were primarily guys, a lot of them had law enforcement connections. I was there that day, and people say, well, weren't you scared? And it's like, I should have been scared, but I think I was so angry
Yeah.
that I wasn't scared. But I mean, it's just hard to describe. My family was like the weekend before, where you're not going to go to work on January 6th, are you? Because you remember, we knew there were going to be protests.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I'm going to work. I'm not worried. I'm going to be in the safest place in the country. I said that.
Do you feel he'll ever be held accountable for all of this?
At this point, the fact that he is sitting in the Oval Office with 34 felonies, no.
Well, that's very sad, Mayor Best. That's I don't want to live in that world.
I think he will, as he leaves, pardon himself for any potential future crimes. No, I mean, the chance to hold him accountable was last November.
And even if we win the midterms, if there are midterms?
Yes. So no, thank you. I guess I was thinking ultimately accountable, but no, we will be able to have. I mean, right now there's no check on him at all. You know, we were raised with that we have 3 co-equal branches of government. Remember that?
Yes.
The
It's a great concept if you think about it.
the legislative, the judiciary, and the executive. He compromised the judiciary in the first term.
Right.
In this term, both the Speaker of the House and the head of the Senate took a trip over to the White House and gave him their gavels.
Yeah.
So that you have the houses of Congress totally neutered. You have the judiciary compromised. So we only have one branch of government right now, and that is the executive branch.
Right.
The other parts are not relevant.
Well, you have said, I believe, that being mayor of Los Angeles is the last office you ever aspire to.
Mm-hmm.
And you're seeking reelection.
Mm-hmm.
But as we look at the future, do you see, because, you know, again, I think it's also almost like we've been rope-a-dope because the Obama administration was so exhilarating for many of us,
Right.
and at least impressive for people who aren't necessarily on the same political side of the fence. But do you see leaders stepping up, getting ready to take?
Yes.
Take. Are you
Yes.
encouraged at all?
Yeah. Oh, I am. Absolutely am. And I have always been really, really invested in the next generation. You know, I started an organization 35 years ago that focused on raising the next generation of leaders. One of those leaders is now our president of the city council. But that's been very, very important to me. And so I'm inspired by the generations that follow. Now, I have a lot of fears and concerns about them too. But at the same time, I think that there will be plenty of people there, and they're experimenting with new things.
I'm guessing that it's a hard enough job being mayor of a gigantic city without the federal government doing what they're doing to us right now. And I'm curious how you feel about this, having been elected. Is this way harder than you could have imagined? Is it exactly what you imagined, or is it?
You know, it's a little bit of all of that, because there's some areas where
You couldn't have predicted.
I couldn't have predicted at all. There's some areas that are harder than I thought they were going to be,
Yeah.
more complex than I thought they were going to be.
Yeah.
But I think probably the biggest challenge, you know, that I feel I face in this role is really the past practice, behavior, culture within the city. And then we just have a number of challenges that have been in the makings for years. I mean, our city infrastructure, the streets didn't just break last night.
Right.
I mean, the broken streets and trash and all of that has accumulated over years and years. And so taking office and trying to dissect and diagnose what the heck happened here, you know, takes a while. But I mean, it's the honor of a lifetime.
Yeah.
I decided when I was a child that I wanted to spend my life really working for justice. And I've done that. And so every job I've had, even before office, has always been with that as the eyes on the prize. You know, I worked in the medical field, and being able to take care of individuals on the spot, especially in the emergency room where I work. This feels a little bit like that. I like the instant gratification.
It's triage. It's a political triage.
Yes, but it's also instant gratification versus when you work in the legislative branch, you don't, I mean, it takes you
a long time.
Like I worked day and night to get the COVID money to come to LA.
Right.
But I don't necessarily see that in the same kind of way that I do when I go out with the street outreach team and watch somebody move from the street to a motel and visit them a month later and see how they're doing, you know, or see a playground open up, or cut a ribbon for new housing. So the instant gratification I've enjoyed after being in the legislative branch for a number of years.
So give us the state of the union of LA at the moment.
You know, we have had a year like you wouldn't believe, right?
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but this year feels like 3 years all rolled up into one.
Absolutely.
And so, in some instances, I think our state of the union, our state of the city is strong because of our people. Because we
Always.
have stood
Yes.
together, we've grieved together, we've
Yeah.
fought back together, we've embraced each other together.
And
We're
the-
sitting in a
and,
room where we can see where Phil had a friend after the fires living right here
Yeah.
for
I mean, we've been through a lot.
Yeah.
But the you're right. The people, and as a small business owner now, I see it. The people that come in, they're just so beautiful. And the somebody smarter than me said, and this doesn't just go, it goes 10 times for LA, but for America, diversity is our superpower.
Yeah. I mean, and I grew up here. I've been here my whole life, and I just love the way the world just kept coming, because we didn't have all of this diversity in the years, you
Yeah.
know. And it was interesting because some of it would come from wars.
Yeah.
I mean, the Central American population exploded in the 80s because of
Yeah.
the civil wars.
Yeah.
I remember Koreatown exploding in the 70s
Right.
because of what was going on in Korea, when Korea was shifting from a military authoritarian government into a democracy.
Right.
You know, and so you could kind of, and I always say, like, if you want to, you know, when you go to dinner, just pick the country you want to go to.
Exactly
Right.
right.
and
That's
you,
right.
And you can
That's
go
what
there.
I love.
That's
I
what
mean,
I love
because
too.
when I can't travel,
Mm-hmm.
the world is here.
Right.
That's why it's great to live here.
And that's why I look forward to, just in terms of the state of our city.
Yeah.
So excited about what's coming our way.
Yeah.
I mean, it actually starts in February with the National All-Star Game, basketball game.
Right.
In May, we have the U.S. Open for golf for women, and I'm hoping we're going to have girls golfing all over the city.
Great.
And then a couple of months later, we have the World Cup. That 8 games are played here, but it lasts for 40 days. So what we plan to do is have activations, community events, celebrations, watch parties all over the city every day.
Yeah.
And I experienced that in Paris, and it was a beautiful thing because probably 5% of Parisianers actually went to the games.
Yeah.
But the minute you stepped off that plane into the city, you felt like you were in the middle of the Olympics because it was everywhere. There were activities everywhere in every neighborhood. And I want people from around the world to come to LA and not just see LA as 3 or 4 places. You know, it's Hollywood, it's Beverly Hills, it's the beach. No. I want them to see the San Fernando Valley and
The little
and
communities.
East LA
Yes.
and Watts and South LA
Right.
and West LA.
And Thai Town and
So yes.
Yes.
So my dream is you get off of the plane and you
Yeah.
got your QR code.
yeah.
And your QR code can tell you which neighborhoods things are, and you can go to cultural events or other activities. Because when people go to the Olympics, they might go, say you're a gymnastics fan.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you go to watch gymnastics, but there might be days between you have other things, you're looking for other things to
There's
do.
no shortage. Yeah.
You don't usually, unless you're extremely wealthy, you don't necessarily have tickets to every single thing.
Right.
So, you know, you pick and choose. But while you're picking and choosing, I want you to go to Doolin's. I want you to go, you know, to
Speaking
your
of
restaurant.
Doolin's, I'm going to have a corn
Yeah,
muffin.
let's
while
have a
we're
little
speaking.
something.
Yes. What you
So
got
you're
here?
part of your.
Mm.
I know that part of what you're doing is getting us ready for the Olympics.
Yes.
And what's the
Shine LA.
what's the biggest challenge? Is it the infrastructure? Is it the metro and the roads and
No. Well, you know, the way we're approaching that, because we have to, our city is so big,
Mm-hmm.
we are focusing on the infrastructure by the venues.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because we can't do everything. So we are focusing on that and doing an assessment of that right now. I asked former city councilman Paul Krikorian, I asked him to stay on. He termed out last December, and I said, stay on, because he had been the budget chair for 10 years. That was critical. And 2, he was involved in the bid for us to get the Olympics. So we started an office called the Office of Major Events. And so his responsibility is to do everything the city needs to get ready. So all of the various general managers that are involved, making sure that they all submit plans, because when we do the budget for this next fiscal year, it has to be done from that lens. What does the city need to do in order to be ready is how we're going to have to prioritize, you know, our spending for the next year.
right?
And does the economic impact, because we have this series
Yeah.
of global events
Yes.
coming, do you have a sense? I mean, I think historically there's always the predictions and then we see what happens. But do you have a sense of what the economic impact will be
Oh, of the games?
of the games?
Oh,
of the
sure.
Olympics?
Yeah, that and I don't know the figures off the top of my head, but massive impact in terms of what it will infuse into our economy. But I want to be proactive about that. I don't want to just passively say all this money is going to come through. So what we've been doing to get our small businesses ready, because these games have to benefit people across the board economically.
Can't just be for the
be-
Olympic Committee.
It cannot,
Yeah.
you know.
I've seen
and
that.
so, yeah, but the way to do that though is that we've been working with small businesses. We've put on 2 summits, one in 23, one in 24, and one in 25. Each summit had over 1,000 businesses there. And we basically are letting them know how to work with the city, what contracts will be available, but also, and even more important than the city, LA 28. And we're obviously doing this in conjunction with LA 28 so that we want our small businesses to know when the contracts will come online.
Right.
Because, you know, the first thing small businesses will complain about is that they didn't know. You know, they don't get the information about the RFPs. And so they get it at the last minute. We want them to know when it's underway. And we want to be a part of that to make sure that the RFPs are written in a way that it doesn't automatically exclude. Because, you know, that can be the death of you. It's written in a way that, you know, there's no way I can possibly apply.
Yeah.
So that's the way we want to really infuse it. But there are very specific dollar figures in terms of what the infusion will be to the local economy.
That's good.
And speaking of you're now a small businessman. In addition to everything else you do as a creative force, do you have any questions?
Of
About,
course.
about things? You know, any requests?
Yeah, I
for
want to take
our
advantage
leader?
of you being here.
Yeah, please do.
I've invested in many restaurants in Los Angeles over the years.
Yeah.
And my wife and I support the arts. We believe in arts education. And to me, being a great chef like Mr. Doolin, it's one of the arts. And it makes our town
right.
better. It's where our social lives are, in our restaurants. I've also felt that diners especially are disappearing because they're low price point and they're hard to maintain. So I've been trying for a couple of years now to open this diner in our neighborhood, right in the heart of LA, right in Larchmont. And I have to be honest, it's been very tough. There's a lot of bureaucracy
Right.
that we need to get through.
Exactly.
And our biggest expense has been the waiting
Wait.
and while paying rent. So help me help you. I want to pay more taxes. I want to employ more people. We just opened. We have huge waits. And the
Phil
city
could not get in today to
Yes,
his own
right.
restaurant.
but we have a patio. I can't tell you the red tape we're going through. We can't get a person on the phone. There's a digital queue, meaning you are answered by a computer that may or may not answer. And when it does, there's nobody to talk to, and there's no single person who will have your case file and follow it through. We've had instances where we've done something according to the blueprint that was signed off by the board, and then someone else will come in months later and say,
oh, no,
that's
not
going
that.
to work.
We're going to do it another way.
But we did it to the
Right.
blueprint that was signed off by your office, and they say, not by me. So every time you get a new person, if you even get a person,
Right.
so it sounds like you've heard this before.
No, but it just,
What do we do?
it drives me crazy.
The mayor just said it drives me crazy, if you couldn't
And
hear
I
that.
can give you other examples. No,
Yeah, yeah.
seriously. So one of the things that we did right away, but it is obviously not working in this instance.
Yes.
Is I sat down with businesses to say, I know the city is difficult. Tell me what it is
Yeah.
so that we can clear it up. And
We
I
want a
did
person.
I did a series of executive orders
Yeah.
to change certain things, to expedite, to cut through the red tape. We did that with Alfresco because
Yeah.
we wanted Alfresco to be permanent since that had worked
Yes,
so well.
and that's great.
But
I
then
can't
we
open my
find out-
alfresco because they said you have to wait till you're open before you can even work on the outdoor patio.
But I can't give you a
But-
permit because
Yes,
you know
exactly.
So what is
And we
happened?
can't reach a person.
Yeah. What has happened is that
Phil, you just reached
I'll
a person.
do.
I reached. She might know a guy. Yeah.
That's right. I know a few guys. So we do these executive orders.
Yeah.
Businesses tell us what needs to happen, and we change it on paper. And then there's the reality. So what I wind up doing is whack-a-mole. And there will be whack-a-mole with this in terms of, because I've already made the calls to find out exactly where it was in terms of, your situation.
Oh, me?
And we're
Oh,
definitely.
that's very sweet.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
No. I looked it up ahead of time. So we know where it is.
Yeah.
And we have told them that they have to deliver. I
Great.
hate whack-a-mole, though,
Yes.
because we happen to be having this conversation.
Yeah.
But what about all of the other people?
They don't have a podcast that can have you on. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
And so that is the way I have approached things, though, is that every time I find a challenge,
Yes.
or every time I find something where we think we have removed red tape,
Yeah.
and then the inertia is to go right back into doing the practice that you were used to doing. But your whole point that I'm now going to go back to, because I didn't look at this aspect of it, which is you weren't able to reach a person. And why
That's
is
it.
that? Is that because
Are you understaffed in that department?
well, I mean, every department says they're understaffed,
Yeah.
but I frankly don't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah.
It could be because of remote work.
Yeah.
But even if that's the case, whether you are working remotely or whether you're in the office, you're supposed to respond. And there's nothing worse than getting one of those recordings that send you. I have a pharmacy where I have to physically go in
Yeah.
because they'll loop me on the recording
That's
forever.
right.
And
But we don't even have a place to go in. We
Right.
would go in. We'd be happy to, but there's nobody to report to. Is it possible to have like an insurance company, a guy who
some notes on this.
a guy who follows through on
Yes.
your case?
Yes, and
so we
sticks
have
with it.
for your lawyer. It's
Yes.
your case.
Yes, and it
sticks
doesn't
with you, so
bounce
you have
around.
a person.
I mean, I've heard crazy stories. You're trying to build a property,
Yes.
and you build it one way because you're told by one department, and another department comes in and says, "Well, I don't like that. I think you need to move this wall 15 feet." Well, moving the wall 15 feet is going to cost me $200,000.
It seems sometimes I have to say it seems arbitrary.
Right,
It seems like
exactly.
on the whim of a person.
Exactly.
It almost seems like a power trip in some
Right.
way for some people.
Right.
Everybody's king of their castle.
Right. I think it can be all of the above. Or
Yeah.
maybe you had a fight with your wife that day, and then you come in and you take it
Take
out.
it out on a poor owner of a small
so
business.
let
Yeah.
me just say that,
Yeah.
though, I am clear the buck stops with me. I knew what I inherited. Well, I sort of knew, but you never know fully what I inherited when I came in.
Yeah.
And I am passionately trying to deal with these bureaucratic issues because a lot of it is just practice, or they'll tell you, well, the rules say. What
Yeah.
I always say is, show me the rule in writing.
Yes.
Because 9 times out of 10, there's no rule.
Right.
It's just practice. Well, this is the way we've always done it, which is like
Yeah.
the worst thing in the world you could say to me because it immediately becomes suspect.
Yeah.
If this is the way you've always done it and it's working this well,
Yeah.
well, then I got a problem with that.
Well, I'm sure you agree that not in my case. I'm a very lucky person, but for a small business
Yes.
owner, those small businesses are literally the lifeblood of any city.
That's right. And we know that one of our biggest issues here is that the city has become unaffordable.
Yeah.
Because I was born and raised here,
Yeah.
I remember when the city was affordable.
Right.
But to me, the best way to make the city affordable is for people to have good paying jobs. And who's going to have those jobs? It's small businesses.
Yes.
It's not big institutions.
Right.
That's not the majority of the employers. So to me, it is in our benefit to have a strong business community.
Yeah.
Especially the small businesses. And it's our job to make sure that they are stable,
Yeah.
but that they also grow. You mentioned, though, broader economic factors and how does that play in? And, the bottom line with that is that we don't know because we never know what side of the bed he's going to get up on. He might wake up tomorrow mad and decide he wants 100% tariffs on everything. And then that leaves you constantly, unstable.
I think we all emotionally feel that.
Or what's happening now with federal funding is that the strings they attach where you have to sign these loyalty pledges, and some of those loyalty pledges are pledges that we just can't make, that we're going to turn everybody in. or that DEI, which amounts to, you're going, any person of color who achieves prominence or an important position is immediately suspect because was that about DEI that person's in that job? But they're asking, those are the two things. And then I think there's a third one that you're asked to sign. And, or you won't get federal money, or if they give you federal money, there's always clawback provisions. So they can claw back money that was spent already.
That not knowing, and I think about it beyond the horrors that you spoke about with the, ICE and the immigration and the, I think about it, just the unintended negative impacts that sort of, my wife volunteers with a great organization reading to kids who need a little help with English and there was a period in the summer, I think, where the kids were afraid to come. The parents were afraid to be anywhere near these schools where nothing was happening other than helping
video
kids.
Where the teacher was dragged out in front of them at daycare.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that was in another state.
Jeez.
But it's all a horror movie. Tell us what's good. Tell us what's working. I like to focus on the positive. In my show, that's what it's about. I feel like the news does a very good job of showing us terrible. But tell us what's good. And do you think it's going to have to get worse before it gets better?
No, I can't imagine that.
It needs to get it needs to get better before it gets better.
After this year? Although
Yes.
I do have to say, when a few months ago we got a tsunami warning, I was like, of course. Of course,
Bring it
there's
on. Yeah.
Of course there's a tsunami.
Yeah.
But again, I go back to the people. I go back to what we're doing once a month to really promote civic involvement called Shine LA.
Yeah.
And it seems like we've had a disproportionate number of Saturdays, last Saturday of the month, where it rains. And people they still come out. And we're doing beautification projects. We're planting trees. We're doing all of this to really kind of push civic involvement and engagement, because when these games come,
Yeah.
especially the World Cup and the Olympics, we're going to need thousands of volunteers and wanting to create that volunteer spirit. Decreasing street homelessness, which we've done 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
We have a reduction in the crime rate, which has happened.
Yes.
But, crime is one of those issues that's a subjective. So for me to tell you that crime has gone down, but if you just got your car stolen, you don't want to hear that. It doesn't matter what the statistics say. I do think it's important to monitor the data and the statistics, but to recognize that if you have been a victim of crime, you're not impressed with any of the numbers, but the numbers are what they are. And crime is at a 40-year low, especially violent crime when we're talking about homicides. I started an office of community safety. The public safety, that's the traditional police, fire, but community safety focuses on prevention and intervention of crime, something I've been working on for 3 decades. Tried a number of pilots over the years, have had them researched and fine-tuned. We know their evidence base, and so we have initiated those programs, because my belief about the police is that what we have done over the years, because we've shredded the safety net, we've dumped all these social problems on police. And I don't think when you go to the academy, you're signing up to deal with homelessness or substance abuse or mental illness. That's not why you went to the academy. But every time we cut something, then it
falls to them.
Right. And so what we do is the Office of Community Safety, number one, has unarmed responders. So you call 911 and it's a person that, is causing problems. They evaluate, do I need to send a police officer or do I need to send social workers? And so we will send people out so that the police don't have to make some of those calls.
Well, that's
it's not
fantastic.
fair.
That's great.
So
And it frees them up for real crime.
it frees them up, yeah. But what we have done to law enforcement over the years, we've not really taken responsibility for.
And I will say, I don't think I've even told you this. I went to a meeting not that long, a few months back, in our neighborhood. We asked to meet with one of our local policemen, and we did. And I asked him, I said, well, listen, we do feel like in LA we pay a lot of taxes. So who do we need if you need more money for what you're doing, who do we need to talk to? And the police officer said, well, the mayor is well aware of this and is on our side. So, and gave us some other things we could do to be supportive. But it was interesting because I think the forces of this ICE thing are the ones that can stop some people from being community minded because they're afraid to go to a meeting or speak up.
That is actually the origin of Sanctuary City, which was way before it was called that. But the original policy was put in place because immigrant communities were being preyed on and they wouldn't go to the police. Because in their countries, the police would detain them. The police would, hurt them. So they would hide. And so the LAPD did a policy that said, we won't cooperate with the immigration enforcement. A lot of work was done to convince the population that it would be safe to report crime. So that was the origin of it.
To move on to something slightly lighter, I wanted to just say that we've never met, but I did for your inauguration. I got a call because I work on the Grammys, and through some of my friends there, I was asked ideas for the music, which you had Stevie Wonder, which that's always my idea of music, and Chloe Bailey. But in any case, I had a question from one of my Grammy friends, and so I wondered, Xavier, can you bring the mayor? This is Jimmy Jam, the great Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, the one of the greatest producers with his partner Terry Lewis of all time, and a bigwig at the Grammys, sent 2 questions that I thought would be interesting.
Hey, Mayor Bass, this is Jimmy Jam. I hope you're good. So I have 2 questions for you. One is, I was wondering your thoughts on AI, on artificial intelligence. I think it's a wonderful tool to help music creators, but I don't want it to be used in a way that takes jobs away from music creators. And also, I want to make sure that people have permission to use it and compensation, that they get paid for using it. So I'm wondering your thoughts on that. And secondly, of all the music that's your favorite music, what would you say is your favorite song? Although I hesitate to use favorite song because it can be for a whole lot of different reasons. So if there was a time capsule and it said Mayor Bass on it, and somebody opened it 100 years from now, what would be the song you would want to play that would tell us everything about you? Okay? Those are my 2 questions. Thank you.
A Stevie Wonder song, Living for the City.
Oh, yeah.
When he came to the inauguration, it was such a great moment because he just kind of wandered on stage and people start looking. You remember that? People started looking and it was like, oh, there's Stevie
really
Wonder.
him. Yeah.
He wasn't announced or anything. He just wandered on stage and then started performing. Yeah. But I am very concerned about AI. I see incredible ways that it can be used. But I'm also worried about it. When I was in Congress, I was on the Intellectual Property Committee of Judiciary. And so we were doing with the abuses that have taken place years before AI to musicians. Yeah. And I think for a lot of us, we didn't realize, because, you just think of the top celebrities, had no idea the plight of songwriters and how different that was than the person performing the music, and the idea that you could have full-blown performances now without anybody. Wow. Without anybody. Like the, that, I don't know what they called her, but that female actress who was AI, who looked totally real.
Scary.
Oh, it is really scary.
Does the mayor, I know, and the governor, what can we do? I think about it, and I'm sure, Phil, you think about it even more, is that like TV production, which is a big part, and film production.
Well, we have some new incentives, right?
Yes, but I want you to know that it's an issue that's been really personal for me for a long time. Before I ever thought about running for office, I was on the board of this organization called Workplace Hollywood, where we were trying to diversify the below the line crafts, because a lot used to pass from father to son. And when the sons were no longer interested, then they needed a new workforce. So we established a program at community colleges so people could learn all of the crafts. And then when I was running, I made a commitment that if I was elected, I would work on the tax credits.
Yep.
So I was elected during the time of Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor. He didn't want to do the tax credits because he said if he did them, it would look too self-serving. But he said, but if we did it, he would sign it.
Okay.
So sometimes what happens in the dark of night in those rooms is not a bad thing. Okay. So it was like at 2 a.m. or so, we slipped the first tax credits in a budget bill.
Yeah.
And we knew we were in the Great Recession, so we knew it was going to be a little bit, but we thought it would grow over time. But it didn't grow fast enough. I mean, during those years, we were worried about Toronto. Nobody talks about Toronto anymore. Yeah. It's all Georgia and New Zealand and UK. But anyway, so yes, the tax credits are great, $700 million. But then I looked to say, well, what could we do in the city to help filming? And so what I did is that another one of those executive orders that basically fast-tracked the permitting process, decrease the cost by saying you don't need as many city staff there.
Yep.
And then the other thing that the industry wanted was a person. They wanted a concierge service, so we set that up in the Board of Public Works.
Everybody wants a person.
They want they wanted to know who they could talk to. You're correct.
It's every
so we
field.
have 2 people.
Yeah.
And they will deal exclusively with that. Yeah. Now, I'm happy to say that even before the governor signed the tax credits, about 14 television shows came back to the city.
Great.
And so I feel, we have a long way to go. But
it's
one thing too,
here.
Well, it is, but also, the average Angelino is not aware of all the ancillary businesses.
That's right.
I am, because my brother owns one of them.
Yeah.
And people just think of the A-list actors.
No,
so,
it's the florist, it's the costume person, it's the clothing, it's the transportation, it's the restaurants, it's everything.
My brother has a business that designs kitchens, custom kitchens.
Yeah.
He should have been out of business when Home Depot came along. But what has saved his business is the niche for providing kitchens for sitcoms and for TV shows.
Right.
And so he has contracts with all of the local studios.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that we educate folks. In our city, we just take it for granted.
Yep.
And to see the way the industry has slowly left. So it's a big priority of mine.
It's company town. It's like if the steel mill left.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And you want to know something? My grandmother, who I never met because she died young, worked in 1932. She worked at what is now Sony Studios. So it goes back. It's 3 generations for me of identity with the industry.
Was there a movie growing up, a book you read growing up that you think helped inspire you to become interested in public service?
Well, yeah, but you know what inspired me really was documentaries and the news, not so much a movie. Uh-huh. But I became a news junkie when I was like about 10.
Wow.
And I have been compulsively following the news since then. So it wasn't so much that I love documentaries, though.
Well, we are in the golden age of documentaries, so that's good.
Mayor Bass, I love meeting you.
Well,
and my invitation is real.
Well, so is my request for the invitation.
Great. All right, we're going to work it out.
So before the end of the year?
I'm here all this month. Yeah, I'm here.
You
through Christmas.
You're not. That's right. You're not here all the time. You're here through Christmas?
I am.
Okay, Victor.
We do it.
And then I got Doolin's.
Exactly.
There you go.
Oh, now we're all going to have some sulfur. So thank you.
Thank
you. It was very nice talking with you.
Pleasure.
And we're neighbors, I haven't been. You know that Muhammad Ali lived here at Fremont Place.
Oh, I know. I know. And there's a house. His house, you go in.
Yeah.
The people have a beautiful foyer, and prominently displayed in the foyer is a framed picture of Muhammad Ali sitting in that foyer.
Oh, is that right?
And he he was here when he was the champ. He was here in the early 70s. Yeah. And he would run around the neighborhood, and people remember. Can you imagine?
Yeah, what a great place to run around.
Specimen running around your neighborhood just for fun.
Exactly.
And he was great with all the kids. I heard, and he was just, he was.
And the first time we ever worked together was we we had an encounter with him that
Yeah.
I'll never
Really?
forget.
Yes.
It's like because
Wow.
Did you ever get to meet him?
No,
Oh,
I never
boy.
met him.
Well, you'd never forget it if
met
you
his
did.
daughter, but no,
Yeah.
I never met him.
well, he threw a punch at Phil, and it was
Oh, yeah.
beautiful. Intentionally missing.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah, he gave me
2001.
a surprise
Yeah.
punch that landed right there. He stopped right there.
God.
Perfect
That fist
comic
is
timing.
bigger than my head.
I bet you still have that image in your face.
I'll never forget it. And then he gave you that smile, and he
Yeah.
was just the
Yeah.
the greatest. The greatest.
Yes, he was. He was. Well, thank you for.
Well, you're the
having me on.
greatest.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. And thank you for
Mayor
my
Bass,
lunch
everybody.
Thanks.
Of
and
course.
my dinner.
Naked Lunch is a podcast by Phil Rosenthal and David Wild. Theme song and music by Brad Paisley. Produced by Will Sterling and Ryan Tillotson. With video editing by Daniel Ferreira. And motion graphics by Ali Ahmed. Executive produced by Phil Rosenthal, David Wild, and our consulting journalist is Pamela Chellan. If you enjoyed the show, share it with a friend. But if you can't take my word for it, take Phil's.
And don't forget to leave a good rating and review. We like 5 stars, you know.
Thanks for listening to Naked Lunch, a Lucky Bastards production.